So here we have an example where we're going to use the square root property, and I'm going to give you the steps to go along with it. So when you come across a quadratic equation, if you're going to use the square root property, you could check to see if it factors first. This doesn't factor. So the first thing to do is isolate the square root, or not the square root, the square part. I'll put the square part. So if you have x squared, whatever is being squared, that part, you got to get by itself. And it has to have a coefficient of 1. So like in the last video, we had a 2x squared, so we had to divide by 2. Okay. So here we have c squared plus 12 equals 0. So to isolate the c squared, we're going to put the 12 on the other side. That's going to give us c squared equals negative 12. Okay? All right. Step 2. Take the square root of both sides. That's applying the square root property. But I'm just going to say it, take square root of both sides. Now, at this point, you might be asking, well, what if it were c cubed? Could I take the cubed root of both sides? The answer is yes, but we're specifically working on quadratic equations right now. So they're going to be, squared. Okay, so take the square root of both sides. That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to put the square root symbol here, and I'm going to put the square root symbol here. Notice where I put it. It's the square root of negative 12, and I have to put a plus or minus in front of that. Okay, so then we simplify our answers. So we get c equals plus or minus. Okay, now this one's going to be a little tricky. You've got a radicand that's negative, so that means we need an I. And then the square root of 12 actually breaks down. It's 4 times 3, so we're going to have plus or minus. I'm going to take the square root of 4, which is 2. The 2 goes there, the square root of 3, and then the I. Now, our solution is going to be, our two solutions are going to be negative 2 square root 3 I and positive 2 square root 3 I. You will also see this written this way, negative 2i square root 3 and 2i square root 3. And I think I talked about that some books are going to do it this way and some are going to do it this way. And it doesn't really matter to me which way you do it if you're used to one over the other. Our textbook that we're using, they do it this way. Okay? All right. And then finally, the last step is to check. Now, this is not to say there are going to be any extraneous solutions, but it's always a good idea to check when you're solving an equation. Check and see if it works. I'm not always going to write the check out for you, but I will on this problem. Okay, so to check it, you're going to take the original equation, c squared plus 12 equals 0. And you're going to take one answer, so I'll take the negative one first. So negative 2 square root 3i, and I have to square it, plus 12, that's supposed to equal 0. Now, how do you check that? Well, you're going to have to square the negative 2. So you're going to have negative 2 squared, you're going to have the square root of 3 squared, and you're going to have I squared. Okay, negative 2 squared is 4, square root of 3 squared, sorry about that, square root of 3 squared is 3, and then I squared is negative 1. And so you get 4 times 3 times negative 1 is negative 12, plus 12 equals 0. So yes, that one checks. All right, now you have to check the other one. So you're going to take, that's that one. Now you take the positive 2, square root 3i, and square it, plus 12 equals 0. So again, you're going to have 2 squared, you're going to have the square root of 3 squared, you're going to have I squared. You probably can see what's going to happen here. But you're going to have 4 times 3 times negative 1 plus 12, or negative 12 plus 12. and that one checks also. Okay, so I'm not going to do the check on all these problems, but that's how that check would work. Okay, so one of these two solutions, and I think your book's going to do this one. So, but in WebAssign, I don't think it matters.